Hey, Sales Enablement Podcast listeners. This is Alastair Woolcock, co host of the RevOps Podcast. We have another special episode for you coming right up. So if you like what you hear, come and subscribe and join us at the RevOps Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast. I'm Alastair Woolcock from Revenue.io, joined by Howard Brown, CEO and founder. And today we have a special guest with Sylvain Giuliani. Sylvain is head of growth and operations at Census. And Sylvain, you and I had a chance to connect, and I'm very excited to dive into PLG today, product-led growth with you on RevOps, tying into the differences with product-led sales, and really just learn more about your background, which is very exciting. I'm like, I know, like you've come from Brussels originally. You learned, I'm going to project a little bit, how to sell in Shanghai. You then went to Cambridge in England, to Paris, and now you're in the heart and thick of it in the Bay Area of San Francisco. So the international flair we're looking forward to today. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. And as you can tell by my accent, I'm French, and I'm not hiding it. And I will just correct you quickly. I was in Canterbury, not Cambridge. Sadly, I didn't went to Cambridge, just Canterbury. But still a great place to be.
Well, I hear there's many a tale from Canterbury.
Exactly.
So yes, for book lovers, they'll catch my bad pun. Well, listen, let's dive right into it. And I want to open, Howard and Sylvain, with this question around product-led growth, right? It's all the rage in the market right now. Every investor deck I see, every VC, you hear executives talking about it, both big and small companies, about we need to be product-led growth. And I'm a big proponent of it. One of my former colleagues, David Yolkeson at Gartner, is a big proponent of it. But is it always right for the world of RevOps? What's your take?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm pretty opinionated about this. I've done PLG before it was called PLG at Pusher. So Pusher was selling mainly to developers. It was selling a real-time API to developers to help them build like chat. So we used to have like 15,000 new signups every month. So, we have a self-serve motion, and we had a small team, and so a small sales team. So it was all about how do we identify the right account, the right user, the right usage pattern to extract more revenue, right? So very PLG before it was PLG. So have 7 years of scars from that. So I feel like I can comment on what is PLG and what is not PLG. And my opinion is like not every company can be PLG. Like, I hosted a dinner a couple of weeks back with people that were in RevOps around the topic of PLG and data. And, people were like, hey, my CEO is asking us to become PLG next year. Like, but I'm not quite sure what that means. Like, we're selling 6-digit deal. Our target, like our TAM is essentially Fortune 500 to 5,000. Like, how does that work out? And, for me, I'm flat out. Like, you can never be PLG. Like, like you never have like the market size to justify it. Like your products are usually very complex because you're selling to your enterprise. Like there's no adoption cycle that you can kind of like accelerate through product. And that's okay. Like, there are products out there that needs like 6 months of pro services to implement because they are solving big problems at big companies, and it requires people in the mix, and that's okay. Like, it's not a bad thing to not be PLG. It's just another type of business. So my opinion is like company can be PLG, but most company shouldn't be PLG almost. They should embrace a more sales-led, human-led, I would say, growth strategy, I guess. That's my hot take here.
So what are the companies that are best suited for PLG? What do those companies look like? And what do they need to do to be successful at product-led growth?
Yeah, I think there's a pattern that have been emerging the past 2 years really. Like to be successful at PLG, you need to have 5 components, right? One, you have to be able to have user that can self-serve the value of your product, right? Like someone needs to be able to sign up, click around, and get the value of your product. Like, the Figmas of the world, like the Notion of the world. Like, I can come in and have a great single player mode experience, and I can get all the value from that, right? That's number one. Like, if you don't have a product that can do that, it's not going to happen, right? Second of all is like you need to have a very large addressable market in terms of users, like not in terms of company. Even if you do B2B sales, it means like you need to be able to have a deployment in enterprise where everybody in the company could be using your product, right? Slack is a good example, Notion, Confluence, like all those single player tools are a good way. Like again, if you're selling a B2B company and only the finance team can use it, like, and the finance team is usually pretty small in the organization, like you're gonna run out of users very, very soon, right? And so that's going to be very difficult to have like this kind of like PLG motion, virality motion within the same account or organization, right? The third point that you need to have is like you need to have a simple pricing that makes sense and that is based on usage, right? And usage can be many things. It can be as core, like as simple as a seat, like how many people are using our product, but it should go even further of like, the type of document you can create, the type of action you can do, and then you should have like tiering because that's something that's going to fuel your PL, like your product-led growth is like the user getting more value of your product by using your product more. They're gonna drive more revenue. They're gonna unlock more use cases, more feature, more usage, and etc. And nobody talks to anyone, and we keep charging credit cards on file, right? That's like the third very important point. The fourth point is this is kind of like more like internal facing. I think to be a true PLG company, you need to have like data. Like it's not because you have those first three checkbox done. It's like I think to be a true PLG company, you need to understand like those patterns of usage. You need to be able to exploit those data points to again nudge the customer into the right direction to do the next best action, right? Like again, it's not because people can sign up to Figma and create diagram by themselves that it's gonna move the needle. Like what's moving the needle is like, hey, Sil, you just created a great Figma doc. You need to share it with Alastair here because he's on your team, right? And so I invite Alastair. Alastair start as a read-only user. I thought, well, this Figma thing, it's pretty cool. I'm gonna request access to be a paid seat. Boom, I get another paid seat. Like, and then then the variety happens, and then at that point it's like, oh, you have 5 users. Well, that's great. Like, what can we do as 5 users? We can create teams. We can create projects. Oh, guess what? Those are paid feature, like and etc. And then next thing you know, 12 months later, you have 100 license deployed in the organization, and then at that point the salesperson comes in and say like, hey, don't you want to consolidate that usage, right? And we give you like a better deal. All that classic sales motion comes on top. So I would say these are kind of like the 4 main points, and then finally the last one is like keep having this kind of like low complexity product. I would say like this is like I mentioned it previously, but I think it is super important that you have a product that is easy to adopt, that doesn't require like insane change management in the organization, things like that. Like, it's not because it's easy to use that you can easily deploy and get easy adopted, right? I think I'm trying to think about example of like such a product. Like I think weirdly enough, like things that in the developer ecosystem are like game changing. I would say things like in the DevOps world, like we're gonna improve like dev productivity. It's great, but actually that means like changing how people work, and usually that creates a lot of friction in large organization. Like people are like, why do I need to change the way I work? I got a promotion 6 months ago. Seems that things are going well. So these are the 5 points I would mention. Yeah.
I think they're really solid points when you think of the characteristics of what makes a PLG company. But I want to just double click on what we said at the intro as well of PLS, product led sales as well, just so the audience really understands the distinction here. That you kind of hinted at this scenario, which I think is a good one. Imagine we're selling a more complex product. It's a 6 or 7 digit deal. And I remember, when I've talked to lots of people around RevOps, they're like, well, I love the idea. I get the importance of multi-channel. I get the importance of digital engagement. I know it all needs to be lined up, but honestly, we have a really complex selling process. We have a very complex product or offering. Maybe it's even services, right? And you suddenly go, well, PLG, to your point, it's not point and click. I'm not downloading. I'm not instant gratification and kind of getting there on that side. So this is where the hybrid PLG moves to PLS and RevOps comes into play. So imagine that scenario where we're now selling and we have multiple stakeholders in a business. Maybe I'm selling to a finance team as well as sales leadership and maybe a marketing department as well. Can I get basic pilots going based upon persona and role and outcome by role? So that's the product piece,
Yep.
right? The the sales piece of that is understanding the nuance of each of those things and getting feedback via a system, maybe Pendo, it would be an example, right? For those that aren't familiar, Pendo is a tool that product development teams use to track usage, see how people are moving in and out of products, things like that. As I have that Pendo data, I want to have my RevOps team extract that, give it to my sales team to help my sales team understand when and how to engage in a PLS led motion. So these things are not mutually exclusive. It's not like we can't take product insight to support a selling motion. The trouble is in PLG only, it often is this nirvana of, well, I don't want sales at all. I don't want to invest there. So I can magically just make my product sell itself.
Yeah.
And PLS is actually really the answer that I think most companies are going to get to, because a lot are in this more hybrid scenario.
Yeah, I see a lot of things like, at Census, we help a lot of companies doing more with the data, whether it's like on a PLG side, but also on like a more traditional B2B. What I always say to them is like, like if you have a very complex offering as the one you mentioned, like, it's okay. But you can borrow everything that is good about PLG and still reap the benefits as a RevOps person, right? And so a perfect example is like a customer of ours that we had a couple of months back. We helped them like implement a lot of those kind of PLG concept. And so again, to put you in context here, like, they mostly sell like 6-digit deal, big deployment across like a couple of like big business unit, like, sales, HR, finance, IT, right? And so the way they sell their product is usually they do a POC that touch all of those business units. It's like a 9 months POC. And, like the way they drive the POC is like the good old fashioned way, which is like, ring ring, how things are going. This is your monthly checking. Are we on track with a project management? Like, classic consultant process implementation phase, right? And so I said to them, look, you have a product. Those product, as you mentioned, you might be using Pendo. For them, they were just like everything was first party event data that we're already capturing. I was like, well, we can take the best thing about PLG, which is essentially product lead scoring, and take all of those usage tracking and show that to your rep in Salesforce. So before they go on a call, they can see the account where they're like, hey, this account is currently doing a 9 months POC with us. They said they needed to adopt our solution in HR, IT, things like that. And so we're going to bring the data of how they use the product inside Salesforce. So the sales reps, before going on a call, they like how they've adopted our solution to the success criteria of our mutual action plan or the POC or whatnot, right? And so just surfacing that data in Salesforce empower the sales team to do lots of different things, right? Like at that point, you can go on in and you can see, hey, you are behind on the POC, so at risk account, like, how can you kind of get in front of like potential churn, delay, paying for everyone, but also you can accelerate deal, right? Because sometimes, and that's an example that they gave us like a couple of months back, it's like, let me tell you about this deal. Like, because we had the data, we were able to call up the customer and say, like, hey, I've just looked at how you use our product right now, and everything is green compared to the action plan mutual action plan that we put together, and we have 3 months remaining on the POC. Like the sales rep just said, is there anything else you need to see to close out the POC? And the customer was like, no, actually, you're right. Like, we're super happy. And then boom, sales rep was able to ask that question that saved him 3 months time on the sales cycle, right? And that means closing revenue sooner and accelerate those deals. I think that is like boring, like PLG concept of like showing like right data, aggregated data, not 50 fields of data, but just like five, 6 fields of data, and allowing the sales team to accelerate the deals just that. And so again, you don't have to be PLG to be doing that. You just need like the core foundation, which is like product uses data in front of the right people at the right time to allow them to do the next best action.
I think it is a good example. I think that one thing that I'm seeing today is companies are racing to PLG without the concept of product led. You can't just take your current product and turn it into product led growth. You have to architect from the ground up, thinking about your customer in the very center of that universe. Again, if you're worried, if you're concerned, if you're thinking about, obsessing about customer experience,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're product led or sales led or customer, you have to put the customer at the center. So that brand experience is what is critical.
Yep.
If you suddenly decide, oh, we're we're just going to let the product-led growth lead us to the promised land, you're going to miss the mark and you're going to suffer mightily. So product-led has to start with product, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand what the value proposition is that your product is delivering, and you need, to your earlier point, make sure that your product is consumable, is easy to understand, easy to use, easy to spread within the organization, making certain that the users know how to extract the value
Yeah.
from that tool. If they're not able to do that, all you're doing is letting go of a bunch of your sales organizations in hopes that you're going to reduce your cost of acquisition, and it's going to be an ugly experiment.
I would even one up, like you're completely correct there, and I would one up you and like kind of share some story here. It's like, at Pusher we used to have like a lot of like support tickets, and so to your point, we're like, maybe our product is not great experience, right? And so we started classifying tickets on like, essentially, is it a technical problem, is it a product problem, or is it like ask for advice ticket, right? And what we find out is actually most of the support tickets that we got from our customers were customers asking us, are they doing it the right way? They wanted to have understanding best practices and more use case. So the product was not failing them. If anything, the product was so easy to use that it opened their eyes on like what else they could do and are they doing it the right way, right? And so that's something I now ask most people to do when I advise companies nowadays, is like whether it's an operation people or like the CEO, I said like, hey, go look at your support ticket and try to classify these two things, because you might be thinking you have like a bad product, but actually you missing educational content, right? And so at that point, it's like, how can I do more with my product? And so this goes back to what you were saying, is like, you actually have the foundation to do a PLG motion where the product can sell itself. What you're missing is like the in-app education, the collaterals webinars, the email nurture campaign, things like that. Like you don't suffer from like a terrible product experience, right? Or you might be, and then you need to fix that, because no amount of education and content will solve the fact that when you click on a button, the spinners goes for like ages.
Yeah.
The error message is like unknown. That's not how you get product-led growth. Like,
Yeah.
you click on a button and something blows up, it's frustration and you're going to leave. Like that's kind of like a good point that you made there, Aman. So I agree with you.
And Sylvain, Howard, what I would suggest is for companies looking at PLG, and for our audience of RevOps leaders out there as well, because they're going to hear this and then go, well, what would I do? I actually tend to think, there's four major questions. One, think in terms of discovery. How is somebody discovering my product? Two, what's the storytelling? What's that motion look like? Three, the user behavior. Four, the mapping of the organization. And Sales Hacker and others have done some really good work around this. And so what do I mean? Discovery. If the product already has some basic adoption and is fairly easy and is, to your point, known, maybe it makes motion. But if nobody's used it yet, you're going to need some PLS motions versus PLG motion to help create the thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
The storytelling, this is where I think a lot of people go wrong. How through a PLG motion am I automating the use case relative to the persona and helping that persona see the impact of how something's saving them money, proving value or something?
Yeah.
Like you need a way of proving that. You can't just go, well, download it, try it, right? Like that's not going to get you there all the way, especially for more complex products that are looking at PLG.
Yeah.
The inverse of that in PLS is, okay, I actually do have sales because they're going to actually share the story. They're going to be the ones that tell the story of and help the buyer understand the value they're going to receive from this motion. The behavior, which is our third bucket, that is where we're looking at and going, all right, but the buyer is already using the product. So how am I pushing insight to them on the motion, Pendo data, other things like that, right? That's what's happening there. So then I can continue the motion and continue the adoption of the behavior from the customer, the buyer. Whereas in PLS, I really want to look at it and say, all right, sales reps here really need to educate the buyer on how to use the product. They're driving the adoption side of it. Then the final piece is the org. And this is now looking at, okay, if it's PLG led, it should be self-evident where the product goes next. Cross-functional, departmental, all of those things.
Yeah.
If it's not, you need a PLS motion to have people help drive the behavior. And I know I'm really simplifying it down to discovery, storytelling, behavior, and org, but everybody rushes to go build to make something clickable and download and this and that. And they don't actually then set up the systems, the tools, the selling process behind it to really make it magical and work.
No, I mean, I agree with you on like, like we don't need to sprint to automation and process it, things like that straight away. Like, I think today something we do, I mean, I do myself at Census and I did at Pusher with my team is like, you need to really understand like what is the kind of like the behavior, as you were saying, of a customer coming to your product and what they're trying to achieve, and then mapping that to like like at the beginning you have a hypothesis of like what's the outcome they're going to use our product for, right? And so today I do all of that manually. So every day I log into our CRM. I have a bunch of what we call like soft PQLs internally, and so we've tried to identify people who are using a product or consuming some sort of content outside the product. And so we say, oh, this account seems to be more or less ready. I literally look at like recording of how they click around in our product using tools like Postdoc, for example, right? Or Pandas you were mentioning. And then I reached out to them and like, hey, it's my understanding that you're trying to use Census to connect like Snowflake to Salesforce and you consume content about doing lead scoring, right? So is that kind of correct? And I saw that you didn't manage to do that thing in our product. Like what happened, right? And so because you show that you have understand where they're coming from, and then they tell you like, yeah, no, I was trying to do this because my boss told me to look into Census, and yes, we're trying to do lead scoring, and so I was trying to see if we can leverage like our first party data to do these things. And so like through doing like 20, 50 of those kind of like, digging and then conversation that you get like quickly at that point, you can go back to your sales team to be like, okay, what it looks like is most of the people being told by their boss because they have a strategic initiative around, how do we maximize inbound lead flow? So we want to do scoring one way or the other. Sometimes it's PQL, sometimes it's other thing. And they want to use first party data to do scoring, right? And to do that, they do that to do what? To increase pipeline and things like that, right? So at that point, you can go back to your sales team. You can tailor that messaging to them, and then they can go to work with it, right? And so this is where you switch from manual work to automation, process, playbook, the whole shebang that operation people can implement in their sleep, right? And I feel like if you do that every 6 months, like you get the product to be changed, you'll see the different type of users in demo requests, in leads that you're going to get because marketing campaigns are going to change. And then you'll do it and you'll be like, wow, since last time, now we get a lot more people who guess what they're doing. They want to achieve something else because maybe we went to a different event. Maybe we went some type of marketing campaign that are attracting differently. So I think that's like very important of like, again, using PLG things that you can either translate to, sales motion, like salespeople, or again, if you have a true opportunity to do PLG, put all of that into your product, like, guide them through like one-way funnel at the beginning to get them to a moment of like, yes, you came to Census, you connected everything, and you use our lead scoring module to do lead scoring. And congrats. Now you can explore the rest of our product because you already got value out of Census the first time, and now you're free to roam around the UI, right? Like I think that's another way of lots of tools to do that nowadays, right? It's like until you've done the one thing we know is valuable to you, you're not going to be able to click anywhere else, right? I think that can work too. But you need to know what is that thing by looking at what the customers are doing. And you can do it with them on a call. You can do it by looking at recording. It's an exercise worth doing as sales and operation leaders, really. It's quite eye-opening.
This leads into one of the other really key insights that I think everybody wants to know is how do we use a PLG, product-led growth versus product-led sales? And I think you're just kind of hinting at Sylvain and Howard, you were earlier. How do I not just drive what's in front of me? How do I go drive the white space, the new opportunity, the additional growth?
Yeah.
Because that, in times of economic duress, like what most companies are in right now, is germane to their success, right? They need to be able to find the white space of revenue. Now, unfortunately, we are out of time for here today. So let's pick that up next time on the white space of revenue. Sylvain, we'll have you back. Howard will dive in. Love to hear, Howard, exactly how you think about the white space of revenue as we lead in. Sylvain, thanks for joining us here today, everyone. Please remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. And we have our new call-in number where we're taking your questions. We're feeding them into the podcast. We'll call you out on future episodes as well. So please do dial and reach us at 323-540-5800. 323-540-4777. That's 323-540-4777. And we will see you next week to discuss the white space of product-led growth as it pertains to RevOps. Howard, Sylvain, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for seeing you next week.